At 9:03 p.m., Chairman Kwon Dae-ho dropped his wine glass. It struck the floor and shattered. 12 guests turned toward him at once. Dae-ho gripped the edge of the table. His breathing changed. His face tightened as his body began reacting to something he had eaten less than a minute earlier. Chairman Kwon, a chair scraped backward. Someone reached for a phone. Another guest shouted for a doctor. But the woman who had prepared the dinner did not panic. Eden Cross moved. Not quickly enough to look frightened. Not slowly enough to look uncertain. She crossed the room with the controlled precision of someone who had rehearsed this exact emergency until instinct had replaced thought. She reached Dae-ho, caught him before he fell, and pulled an injector from the pocket of her coat. "Stay with me," she said quietly. He looked at her. For 1 second, their eyes met. Then Eden turned toward the guests. "Call emergency services." Her voice was calm. Too calm. At the far end of the table, Director Ha Seon-mi was watching her. Not Chairman Kwon. Not the shattered glass. Eden. And something in Director Ha's face made Eden stop for half a second. Recognition. Not of the chef. Of the plan. 4 years earlier, Eden had stood across the street and watched her restaurant burn. Tonight, she had invited the woman responsible into her dining room. And Director Ha still believed she was the one controlling the evening. She wasn't. 4 years before that dinner, Ember had been Eden Cross's entire life. The restaurant stood in Yongsan, Seoul, built from 6 years of work, sacrifice, sleepless nights, and stubborn belief. At 29, Eden had designed its kitchen herself. She had chosen every surface, every workstation, every detail that made the restaurant feel like hers. Ember was not simply a business. It was proof. Proof that she could build something beautiful in a city that had never promised her anything. Then, on a Tuesday night in November, it burned. Eden had been inside finishing preparations for Wednesday's service when the fire began. She escaped through the back exit with her sous chef and 3 members of her kitchen staff. The building did not survive. For 4 hours, flames consumed 6 years of her life. The handmade menu boards disappeared. The reservation book disappeared. The kitchen she had spent 8 months designing disappeared. By morning, Ember was nothing but smoke, blackened walls, broken glass, and ash. Eden stood across the street. She did not cry. She simply watched. Her phone was still in her hand when she called her husband. Chairman Kwon Dae-ho answered immediately. "Are you safe?" "I'm safe." "Where are you?" "Across from Ember." Silence. Then Eden said the words she had been afraid to say aloud. It was them. Dae-ho understood immediately. "Dae-sung?" "Yes." Another silence. Then his voice changed. "We don't react." Eden stared at the burning building. "They destroyed everything." "I know. They want to hurt you." "I know. They think they can destroy me to get to you." Dae-ho paused. "Then we wait." Eden looked at the flames. "How long?" "However long it takes to do it right." She closed her eyes. "And Ember?" "We build something they cannot burn." The call ended. Eden remained on the pavement until the fire crews finished. That night, the official explanation would eventually become an electrical fault. Eden never believed it. Neither did Dae-ho. What they did not know yet was how far Dae-sung Group had gone to protect its position in Seoul's corporate world. For years, Dae-sung had viewed Kwon Capital as a threat. They blocked merger negotiations. They delayed agreements. They pressured board members. They planted doubts about Dae-ho's judgment. And when none of it worked, they went after the person they believed could finally break him. His wife. Eden disappeared from the public eye. She stopped using her old professional name and began working as a private chef, moving through corporate residences and exclusive events where powerful people spoke freely because they assumed nobody important was listening. She listened. She watched. She remembered. And over the next 4 years, she built something more dangerous than revenge. Evidence. Attorney Shin helped turn that evidence into a legal case. Detective Choi had spent 11 months building her own investigation into Dae-sung Group, and Director Ha Seon-mi had unknowingly placed herself at the center of it. Then Eden sent her an invitation. A private dinner. A room full of powerful people. A table set with 12 places. And a camera above the china cabinet. Director Ha accepted because she believed she was walking into an opportunity. She believed she would observe Kwon Capital, gather information, and leave with an advantage. She did not know the chef had spent 4 years preparing for her arrival. At 8:47 p.m., Eden carried the main course to the head of the table. Dae-ho looked at her. She looked back. 1 second. Nothing more. He picked up his fork. Eden returned to the kitchen. At 9:03, the glass fell. And while everyone else saw a medical emergency, Detective Choi saw something else. Director Ha's left hand had moved toward Chairman Kwon's plate. A small vial. A precise movement. 32 seconds. That was all the camera needed. And that was the moment Director Ha's 4-year secret began to collapse. But Eden had not invited Director Ha merely to expose a single act of sabotage. The dinner had been designed to connect tonight's evidence to the fire that destroyed Ember 4 years earlier. Attorney Shin had prepared the legal documents. Detective Choi had prepared the investigation. The camera had been legally installed 6 months before. Every detail had a purpose, and every person at the table had been placed there for a reason. Eden had waited 4 years for one mistake. Tonight, Director Ha had made it. She just did not know that the room was already recording everything. Before midnight, the woman who burned Ember would finally understand the trap too. At 9:17 p.m., Detective Choi stood. She did not raise her voice. "My name is Detective Choi. I am with the Seoul Metropolitan Police. Nobody leaves this residence until I say otherwise." The room went silent. Director Ha looked at her, then at Chairman Kwon, then at Eden. "This was clearly a cooking accident," Director Ha said. "The chef should be questioned immediately. Allergen protocols may not have been followed." Eden met her eyes. They were followed exactly. Director Ha gave a sympathetic smile. "Then perhaps the mistake was made elsewhere." Detective Choi stepped between them. "I'll determine the order of questioning myself." Director Ha said nothing. She simply sat down. It lasted less than a second. Fear. Then it disappeared. At 9:18, Eden sent Attorney Shin a message. 2 words. Camera confirmed. She returned her phone to her pocket. Chairman Kwon was breathing normally now. The reaction had been controlled, managed, and carefully timed. But the evening was only beginning. She walked directly to Detective Choi. "The camera documentation is here," she said. "Installation records, authorization, date, location, and chain of custody procedures." Detective Choi nodded. "Show me." They moved into the study. Chairman Kwon followed. Eden remained near the doorway. The footage began. 32 seconds. Director Ha's hand moved toward Dae-ho's plate. A small vial appeared. A precise deposit. Then her hand disappeared beneath the edge of the table. The video ended. Nobody spoke. Detective Choi played it again. On the second viewing, she watched Director Ha's face rather than her hand. Calm, focused, prepared. When the footage ended, Detective Choi turned to Eden. "How long has that camera been there?" 6 months. "Why?" "Because I needed to know what happened in rooms where people believed I wasn't listening." Detective Choi studied her. "And Director Ha?" "We began focusing on her 3 months ago." "Why?" Eden looked toward Chairman Kwon. "Because every road kept leading back to her." Attorney Shin opened the folder. Blocked negotiations. Board member pressure. Internal communications. Financial records. Names. And one file marked Ember. Detective Choi touched it. "This is the restaurant fire?" "Yes," Attorney Shin said. "You have evidence connecting Dae-sung Group to the fire?" "Not enough for a conviction yet." Eden spoke from the doorway. "Not yet." Detective Choi looked at her. "You planned tonight knowing you could expose yourself legally?" "Yes." "You administered the controlled allergen yourself?" "Yes." "And you knew Chairman Kwon would react?" "Yes." "You could have seriously harmed him." Eden's expression hardened. "I knew the medical limits. I followed them." "That doesn't answer the question." "No," Eden said. "It doesn't." Silence settled over the study. Then she continued. 4 years ago, they burned my restaurant. The investigation called it an accident. I had no proof. No witnesses willing to speak. Nothing strong enough to survive scrutiny. She looked at the tablet. So I stopped trying to make them admit what they did. I started making sure they could not deny it. At 10:47, Detective Choi returned to the dining room. Director Ha was still seated. Detective Choi stood before her. "Director Ha-seon-mi, you are being placed under formal caution while we investigate attempted poisoning and related offenses." Director Ha's lawyer immediately stood. "My client has done nothing wrong." Detective Choi looked at him. "You can advise her after I finish." Director Ha remained calm. She began explaining that she had only touched the plate because it looked improperly positioned. She spoke about table settings and presentation. Her explanation was polished. Then Attorney Shin placed the tablet on the table. The footage played. Director Ha stopped speaking. 32 seconds. Her eyes followed her own hand. The vial, the deposit, the withdrawal. When the footage ended, she stared at the black screen. She did not ask to see it again. "I want my lawyer," she said. "He's here," Detective Choi replied. Director Ha looked toward Eden. "You understood Korean." Eden said nothing. "You understood everything we said." "Yes." Director Ha's expression changed. "You knew." "I listened." "For how long?" "Long enough." Director Ha leaned back. For the first time that evening, she looked less like a powerful executive and more like someone trying to calculate the distance between herself and a locked door. At 11:47, Detective Choi's phone rang. "My name is James Wu. I worked for Daesung Group for 6 years. Detective Choi stood. "What do you want?" "I have documents." "What kind?" "Everything." He paused. "The merger interference, the board pressure, the communications about Ember." Detective Choi's expression changed. "Where are you?" "I can't tell you." "Then why call me?" "Because I finally realized something." "What?" "They thought they were untouchable." James continued. "They aren't." Detective Choi listened as he began describing 14 months of internal records, meeting notes, communications, and instructions he had kept hidden. He knew about the pressure campaign. He knew about the merger. And he knew about the fire. When he finished, Detective Choi asked 3 questions. James answered all 3. Then she said, "Send me everything." "I will." The call ended. Detective Choi stood alone in the study. 4 years. 1 restaurant. 1 fire. 1 woman who refused to disappear. And now, finally, someone from inside Daesung Group was opening the door. At 12:31 a.m., Detective Choi returned to Director Ha with the new testimony. She placed the transcript beside the tablet. Director Ha looked at the footage, then the documents, then her lawyer. The lawyer read quickly. His expression became serious. "Director," he said quietly, "you need to understand what this means." Director Ha already did. "What are the charges?" she asked. Detective Choi answered, "Attempted poisoning, corporate interference, conspiracy, and charges connected to the Ember fire." Director Ha stared at the tablet. Then she whispered, "The chef." Detective Choi nodded. She understood everything. Director Ha closed her eyes. The woman she had dismissed as invisible had understood every word spoken at that table. And now, every word was coming back to haunt her. The detective left the room and found Eden standing alone in the kitchen. The dinner was still on the table. 12 plates, 12 glasses, 1 broken wine glass on the floor. Eden looked at it for a moment. "Is it done?" she asked. "Not yet," the detective said. "But it's close." Eden turned toward her. "What did James give you?" "Enough to reopen the Ember investigation." For 4 years, Eden had imagined hearing those words. She had imagined shouting, crying, calling someone. Instead, she simply nodded. "I knew there was a reason he called tonight." The detective studied her. "You expected him?" "No." "Then how did you know?" "I didn't." That answer surprised the detective. Eden continued, "I only knew that eventually someone inside Daesung would get tired of carrying their secrets." The detective looked toward the dining room. "You built this entire evening around that possibility." "I built it around evidence." "There is a difference." "I know." The detective almost smiled. "You're difficult." "So I've been told." Then the detective became serious. "Eden, I need to ask you something. Did you really plan to expose them tonight because of the fire?" Eden looked down at her hands. "Yes." "Only because of the fire?" "No." She looked toward Chairman Kwon. "He lost something too." Dae-ho entered the kitchen. "You're talking about me?" Eden looked at him. "You heard that?" "I heard enough." The detective stepped aside. Dae-ho walked toward his wife. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then he asked quietly, "Are you okay?" Eden laughed once. "After 4 years?" "I mean tonight." She looked at him. "I've been ready for tonight for a long time." Dae-ho reached for her hand. "I know. You shouldn't have been the one sitting at that table." "I had to be." "You could have been hurt." "So could you?" She looked away. He squeezed her hand. "We said we would do this together." "I remember." "Then don't carry it alone." Eden finally looked at him. "I wasn't." The detective watched them. She had spent years seeing powerful people perform loyalty for cameras, shareholders, and newspapers. This was different. There was no performance here. Only 2 people who had survived something together. At 1:08 a.m., the detective returned to the sitting room. Director Ha was waiting with her lawyer. The atmosphere had changed. She no longer looked confident. She looked tired. The detective placed another document on the table. This is a preliminary statement from James Wu. Director Ha stared at it. You can't use that. We can investigate it. He's lying. Perhaps. The detective pointed toward the tablet. But the footage is real. Director Ha said nothing. And if Wu's records are verified, the fire will no longer be treated as an electrical accident. Director Ha's lawyer leaned toward her. Don't say anything. She ignored him. Do you know what they did to that restaurant? She asked. The detective looked at her. You tell me. Director Ha swallowed. They were told to scare her. Who gave the order? Silence. Director Ha? She looked at the floor. No one gave an order to burn it. The detective's eyes narrowed. Then what happened? We were supposed to send a message. To whom? Kwon Dae-ho. And Ember? Director Ha closed her eyes. They chose the location. Who? She said nothing. The detective waited. Finally, Director Ha whispered. Senior people. Names. Director Ha looked toward her lawyer. He shook his head. But she had already crossed the point of no return. 3, she said. She gave the detective the names. At 1:31 a.m., the detective walked back into the kitchen. Eden was sitting at the counter. Dae-ho stood beside her. It was ordered, the detective said. Eden's fingers tightened around her cup. By who? The detective told her. Eden closed her eyes. For 4 years, she had carried a question that had never had an answer. Now it did. Dae-ho looked at her. Eden. She opened her eyes. I don't want them to be the reason Ember comes back. Dae-ho nodded. Then don't let them be. She looked at him. What if I rebuild it? Then rebuild it. What if I make it better? Make it better. What if I don't want it to be a symbol of what happened? Then it won't be. Eden smiled faintly. I want it to be a restaurant again. Dae-ho smiled. Then that's what it will be. She looked down at the kitchen counter. I want the same location. I already had it inspected. Her head lifted. When? 8 months ago. Eden stared at him. You were planning this too? I was preparing for when you were ready. She shook her head. You're impossible. So are you. For the first time that night, Eden laughed. It was small, but it was real. By 2 in the morning, the dinner was over. The guests had left. The police had secured the evidence. Director Ha remained under investigation, and James Wu's documents were being transferred into official custody. But Eden stayed behind. She walked through the dining room alone. She looked at the chairs, the empty plates, the shattered glass. 4 years ago, she had watched fire consume everything she had built. Tonight, she had watched the people responsible begin to lose everything they thought made them untouchable. Yet she did not feel victorious. She felt finished. There was a difference. She walked into the kitchen and removed her chef's coat. Underneath it, she was wearing the same simple black dress she had arrived in. She folded the coat carefully. Then she looked at the knives she had brought with her. Her hands rested on the counter. Tomorrow, she whispered. Dae-ho appeared in the doorway. Tomorrow what? Tomorrow we start rebuilding. He smiled. Then I'll see you at 7. 7:30. 7. 7:15. Fine. She smiled. Good. He walked toward her. And for the first time in 4 years, Eden allowed herself to believe that Ember was not a grave. It was a beginning again. 6 months later, Eden stood outside the construction site in Yongsan and stared at the new sign. Ember. The letters were simple and familiar. Reopening soon. She touched the sign and smiled. Dae-ho stepped beside her. You like it? I love it. You've said that 3 times. I've waited 4 years. I'm allowed to say it 4 times. He laughed. Behind them, workers carried equipment through the entrance. The kitchen was beginning to take shape. The walls were unfinished, and nothing looked beautiful yet, but Eden could see it. The kitchen, the ovens, the preparation tables, the dining room, everything she had created with her hands. For the first time, she could imagine Ember without seeing flames. Her phone rang. Attorney Shin. Eden answered. How bad is it? She asked. Depends what you mean by bad. The investigation. Daesung's board is collapsing. How many? 3 senior executives have resigned. 2 are cooperating with investigators. Director Ha is negotiating a formal statement. And the fire? Officially reopened. Eden closed her eyes. Good. There is something else. What? The journalist from the dinner published the first article this morning. What did she write? Attorney Shin paused. She started with Ember. Eden smiled. Good. She called you the woman who refused to disappear. Eden shook her head. I don't like that. Why? Because I didn't refuse to disappear. What did you do? I disappeared long enough to rebuild. Attorney Shin laughed. That sounds better. When the call ended, Dae-ho looked at her. You really don't care about revenge anymore? Eden considered the question. I cared about it for years. And now? Now I want my restaurant. That was the truth. The world might remember the fire. The newspapers might remember Director Ha. Corporate Seoul might remember the night a private dinner became the beginning of Daesung's collapse. But Eden refused to let those things become Ember's identity. She wanted people to walk through the doors because the food was extraordinary. She wanted chefs to learn from her kitchen and customers to sit down without knowing what had happened there. She wanted the restaurant to become ordinary again. Eden had decided it would not own her. 3 months later, the kitchen was complete. Eden walked through it alone before opening night. She touched the counter, checked the ovens, opened the refrigerators, looked at the knives arranged exactly where she wanted them. Everything was ready. Dae-ho entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. You're here already. I couldn't sleep. Tonight? Tonight. He handed her a cup. She took it. What if nobody comes? He looked at her. Then I'll eat everything. She laughed. You can't eat everything. I can try. The next evening, Ember reopened. The first reservation was at 6, and by 5:45, every table was full. Eden stood in the kitchen doorway and listened. Cutlery, laughter, footsteps, orders being called. The sound she had missed for 4 years. Her sous chef walked toward her. Chef? She turned. Yes? Table 4 says the food is incredible. Eden smiled. Tell them thank you. They want to meet you. Later. You're not nervous? She looked around the kitchen. No. That surprised him. Why? Eden picked up her knife. Because I've already survived the worst review this restaurant could ever receive. He smiled. Then the dinner service began. At 8:03, Eden walked into the dining room. She saw Dae-ho sitting quietly at a corner table. He raised his glass. She raised hers. They didn't need a speech or celebration. Ember was alive. Years later, people would still tell the story of the dinner. They would talk about the chairman collapsing, Director Ha, and the 32 seconds that changed everything. But Eden remembered something else. She remembered standing across the street while Ember burned. She remembered believing that 6 years of work had disappeared in 4 hours. She remembered calling Dae-ho. She remembered asking how long she would have to wait, and she remembered his answer. However long it takes to do it right. He had been right, because revenge had ended. The investigation had ended. The fire had been answered. But what Eden built afterward was bigger than revenge. It was hers, and nobody could burn that down. One evening, Eden stood outside Ember after closing. Dae-ho came outside. You ready to go home? In a minute. He stood beside her. She looked at the sign above them. Ember. I used to think the fire took everything from me, she said. It didn't. I know that now. She looked at him. It took the restaurant. And gave you this. She smiled. No. I built this. Dae-ho agreed. You did. Eden looked through the window. Inside, her chefs were cleaning the kitchen. The lights were warm. Tomorrow, customers would return. Life would continue. And that was the victory. Not that Daesung had fallen. Not that Director Ha had been exposed. Not that Eden had proven she was right. The victory was that she had stopped measuring her life by what other people had tried to destroy. She had rebuilt. She had returned. And she had done it without becoming the person who destroyed her. If Eden's story stayed with you, subscribe to Afro-Korean Folktales. Like this video if you believe that sometimes the strongest revenge is simply rebuilding what they tried to take from you. And tell us in the comments, if you were Eden, would you have waited 4 years for the truth, or would you have walked away and started over somewhere else? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes people think destroying what you built means they have destroyed you. They haven't. Sometimes the fire only clears the ground. And when the smoke disappears, you discover something they never expected. You are still standing. Eden Cross was still standing. Ember was still standing. And this time, nobody was going to take either one away.